Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com. It's a windy day, and I'm just laying down some leaf mulch in this wind. And I thought I'd do a really short video just speaking to a concern a lot of people have about leaves and wind. They'll see that I mulch my garden. You can hear the wind. I got a little wind protector thing on the camera, but you can still hear it. So I live in Nova Scotia, Canada. It's a peninsula jutting out into the North Atlantic Ocean, and we get a lot of wind here. We get hurricanes, tropical storms, everything associated with being right next to a huge ocean. It's windy, okay? So wherever you are and you say it's windy here too, okay? So I mulch a lot of my beds with leaves and other things, but leaves is the easiest thing to get because people bag them up and put them at the end of their driveway, and you get the leaves and the bags, which are useful, both useful in the garden. So people will see me doing that in videos and say, it's windy where I live, I can't use leaves. Well, it's windy where I live, you can totally use leaves. You just gotta have clever ways of holding them down. So let me just show you some stuff I've done here in the garden. Also with things like leaf bags and cardboard, you gotta hold that down. So here's a bed where I've got potatoes planted. And I just planted these about a week ago, and they're not up through yet, but you can see I've got just old leaves, okay? And I put these spruce boughs on top, and these are reused because I used them on another garden before. You put these on top like this, the potatoes have no trouble growing up through all of this. Okay, I don't know why, but they can do it. The potatoes have no trouble getting through this. You can have 4 inches of leaves and a couple inches of spruce boughs. They'll get through it no problem. And you don't need spruce boughs, just anything that fans out like a hand and will hold the leaves down, any kind of branch. Someone's going to say, doesn't the needles acidify the soil? No, they don't. Okay, I'm not going to go into it. There's all kinds of debunking websites talking about that. No, they're not going to. And I'm not going to leave them there forever anyway, but no, they're not going to. Even though the needles are somewhat acidic, they're not going to acidify your soil. That's a myth. Here's a bed where I had boughs on this bed. I planted these maybe a month ago. You can see they're up. And I took the spruce boughs off to use them over there in that bed. Right, because you notice they're not green, right? They're all dead. Right, they were green when we first put them down. Okay, but notice the leaves, even though it's really windy, the leaves aren't moving at all. It's because once the leaves are held down and you've had a number of really good rains and stuff like that, it sort of nestles them and knits them together. It's not hurricane proof, but it pretty much works, right? Once these potatoes get growing and all the foliage comes in, that will protect the leaves from wind. But for the most part, these aren't going to go anywhere. I've had these off for a few days now. We've had some wind. You know, yesterday we had a strong wind warning, and they're still in place. For things like cardboard, I just use old rotten logs, rocks, whatever I can find, and you just use enough to keep it down. Now here's a bed where I've got gosh, it's really windy. Here's a bed where I've got zucchini planted. You can see they're starting to come up here, and I just used leaf bags, covered the whole thing with leaf bags. I cut holes to plant the zucchini, and I just used a little bit of bark, a little bit of mulch and some old rotten logs and stuff like that, laid it all out. Okay, once these plants are about 6 or 7 inches high, I'll put leaf mulch or something all over the whole thing, and the bags will just break down and disappear. They're already starting to break down already. Bags last about, they'll hold up for about a month and they just kind of vanish. Here's a bed that I mulched recently where I got lettuce growing. You can see some of the leaves have come off. That's not from the wind. That's from robins, birds getting in. Right, the birds will go in, they'll move the leaves around looking for worms. You get a leaf mulch on the ground, you're going to have lots of worms. The robins are smart. They know that's a good place to get a meal. They're going to come root around. You just got to put those back. If there was no wind at all, those would still be over there. Okay, another good trick for putting them down is, I'll show you over here. So this is a pile of leaves, bags and bags and bags and bags of leaves that I gathered last fall. It's June now. I gathered them last fall and just kept stacking them here, and they sat here all winter getting pushed down and weighted down and compressed and half broken down. And for whatever reason, when they're in that state, they tend to stay in place better than if they're just like you know, big dried leaves. Also, small leaves tend to not pick up as much wind as large leaves. So like, even though I've got them here, oak and maple leaves are less good than a smaller leaf, like something from a maybe balsam or something, just whatever, right? Small leaves are the best, even though it's counterintuitive, but they tend to knit together and stay in place better than big leaf. Think of a big leaf like a big sail. They grab wind and they're more likely to blow away. Another thing that holds leaves in place is just having a border like this, right? We've got a 6-inch high garden box, and we got the soil just slightly above grade, and then we bring the leaves up level with the top of this. There's a little bit of protection here, right? The leaves might move around a bit, but the board sort of hems them in and keeps them in place. Also having natural borders like this wall of peas, right? We've got potatoes here and peas here, right? There's not a lot of area for wind to affect this, so it will stay in place for the most part, right? You can see these have not been weighted down. Another thing, another trick when you're laying your leaves down is if you just got some old sticks or poles or anything, just lay them down. Like you see, I got rows of garlic here, and this was mulched last fall, right? Fall 2023, and I haven't done anything, right? But I just laid some long sticks down between the rows of garlic, and that's enough to just knit the leaves together and hold them in place. You don't see too many weeds here, right? That's because the leaves have stayed in place for the most part and prevented the weeds from germinating, that sort of thing. Another good trick is, I recognize not everyone has spruce boughs at their disposal to use to hold leaves down, is to get material like this, right? This is concrete wire remesh. You can get a sheet of this for like, I don't know what they cost now, but these are 12 bucks when I bought them. They're probably more like $15 now. It's a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet, okay? And these last years and years and years of heavy gauge steel, right? You can cut these easily. I got videos on how to cut them without using really any fancy tools. Just a cold chisel and a hammer basically is all you need to cut these. They cut very easily if you know what you're doing. So I just put this right there flush at the end. Just a few taps. It's through. See, that's all that was required. Right, let's move it over for the next one. It's very quick. I'd say you could probably do this about as quick as you could with an angle grinder. Let me just reposition the camera. I mean, this isn't any slower than an angle grinder. It's way safer, right? There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, that whole piece is separated, right? And you can just lay these down over your beds to hold the leaves down, right? That's this bed over here of onions. When I first planted the onions, I just put the onions in and laid the leaves down, and then I put the concrete wire remesh over the whole thing to hold it all in place. I did the same thing in this bed where I've got garlic growing. Last fall, I put the garlic in the ground, put the leaves down, put one sheet of concrete wire remesh over the top of it, and just stayed there all winter like that. And then in the spring, once the plants were a few inches high, I took the wire remesh off to use for trellises. Here's a bed with more mature potatoes, right? They've come in quite nicely. And once the potatoes are of this size, they'll hold the leaves in place because they can buffet the wind and provide a little bit of shelter for the leaves. So that works really well too. Anyway, just a few strategies for using leaves and mulches like that blow around easily when you got a lot of wind. It's totally doable. You just have to be creative in finding ways to hold it down. And there's all kinds of things you can use. You don't need any one particular thing. Just anything that fans out, has some weight, and can hold the leaf down and keep it from grabbing wind and taking off. It's not that complicated. You just need to use a little bit of creativity and think it through. It's no problem. So I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.